ball in the center, and we're going to let it roll. Going on with metaphors from Work Up 2014. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start. Oh, wait a minute. For some reason, I can't record. Hold on, this is troublesome. If I can't, hockey metaphor, please. If I can't record, I'm back. We're good to go. We're going to start recording now. And here we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Barbara, and I would like to welcome you all to our latest Novedge webinar episode. In this week's episode, From Model to Rendering with Rhino and V-Ray. This is a double software webinar where a full face motorcycle helmet will be modeled in Rhino 5. Consequently, attendees will be shown how to obtain highly professional rendering results using V-Ray 2.0. Presenting this webinar, one of Novedge's favorite Rhino instructor, Maia Merav Holtzman. A jewelry and industrial designer, Maia employs Rhino 3D modeling to supplement handcraft in her line of limited edition jewelry. Maia also works as a freelance modeler and renderer. Before we get going, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. Novedge is one of the largest online design software stores. We offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. Put us to the test and come visit our webpage at www.novedge.com. As you can see, we carry both Rhino 5 as well as V-Ray. And a little more about Maia. Maia runs a series of intensive Rhinoceros 3D workshops at Design Rhino, her Robert McNeel Associates in Authorized Training Center in Los Angeles. You can check our classes at www.designrhinonyc.com. Have you been on the Novedge blog lately? The Novedge blog is a great resource to keep up with the latest software updates and where you can enjoy inspiring interviews of today's innovators. And for daily news and promos, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Join our network and you won't miss another special or another Novedge webinar ever again. Next week, coming up, we have a beginner's look at T-splines for Rhino 5. This webinar will explain the benefits and nuances of T-spline subdivision surface modeling and how tag team strategies between Rhino 5 and T-splines can be used for exquisite form development and easily initiated changes. Last but not least, today's presentation is free and is being recorded live. So if you want to rewatch this or any webinar episode, you can find it on YouTube and Vimeo channel. Just search for Novedge. And now, without further ado, I will leave the stage to Maia. I will make you the presenter, and so everybody will see your screen starting from very soon.
Excellent. I'm going to take over right now.
Yes, take over.
And can you see my screen?
Of course, it looks great.
Great. Awesome. So this is what we'll be modeling today. And in order to get through this, I have set up my model so that I can sort of jump from section to section. And I think that we will actually get through the whole thing within the hour so that we can all run back and watch the next match. I am going to go ahead and just give you guys a couple of little bits of information before we start. First is that I will be running 2 level 1 Rhino modeling workshops. The first one is a Los Angeles workshop that starts next Tuesday. I still have 2 seats left for that. And the second one is a San Francisco intensive, which is a 3-day weekend, and that starts at the end of July, I think July 24th or 5th. There are seats available for that as well, so feel free to find me on my website. I'm sure you can do that through Novedge, and register if you are in my area and wanting to participate. I'm going to go ahead and jump into my Rhino file right now, and I'm just going to move this over if I can because it's a little bit distracting. All right. So the first thing that I've done here is I've set up my picture frames, which is something that if you've seen my webinars in the past, you know that I like to do. I like to model using a reference point, even if it's a sketch or something like that. And for this particular exercise, we are going to be doing some solid modeling using deformable shape. So I'm going to start in my right view here. I'm going to open up this viewport, and I'll go to my solid creation menu here, and I'm going to create a sphere center radius from 0. The sphere is going to have a radius of 43. And you'll see that I just created this sphere with that particular radius, and if you notice, I have a seam running along the right-hand side of the sphere. So before I do anything else, I'm just going to rotate that sphere 45 degrees, and I'm going to scale it down to approximately the size of my helmet. So something like that for now. Just bring it in a little bit more, not like that. One other thing to mention is that today I'm modeling using the Space Mouse Pro. The guys at 3D Connection were nice enough to lend me one to take a little peek at, and it's awesome. So I just want you guys to know that I'm using that for this webinar rather than a regular mouse. I'm going to rebuild this sphere now in order to make it deformable. So I'll just go ahead and either in my surface tools menu here I can rebuild, or I can just type in rebuild. And I'm going to assume that you guys don't need me to tell you where the icons are for this webinar, because otherwise we will get really bogged down. But in order to make this deformable, I'm just going to want to change the degree of curvature here from 2 and 2 to 3 and 3. And for the point count, I'll leave the point count at 8 and 5, and I'll see what happens in terms of adding points as we go. So I'll say OK now. And then I'll hit F10 to turn on my points, surface points here. So the first thing I'll do now is I'm going to toggle my front tab to go into the front viewport, and I'm going to start deforming this shape. And the initial thing that I want to do before I start trying to model it is I want to actually move this seam that I've placed at the bottom completely out of the way of what I'm going to eventually be modeling. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of those control points there, and my gumball is on, and with my gumball on, I'm just going to drag them down and away from my shape. So basically what I'm doing is I'm limiting this seam's interference with the surface modeling process. The seam can make little indentations and strange results, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm moving it away. That may be a little far. Sometimes you might want to move it only slightly down. But once I've got that moved down like that, then I can go ahead and I can grab these and I can start to scale my shape in a little bit. I can go ahead and maybe move these down a touch like that. And then I can adjust the top pieces like this. Right. And you can see how quickly we start to get the shape that I'm trying to achieve. I mean, it's pretty amazing how quickly that happens. Now if I toggle the right viewport tab here, and I'm just going to make this plan view again, we can start doing the same thing in the right view. So I'm using my scale handle on my gumball here to just adjust the points that will become the basis for the shape of this. And when I get to a point like this where I say, okay, I no longer have as much control over this shape as I'd like, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert a knot, which is going to add some information to this surface and make it a little bit more easy to adjust. So I'll go to insert knot, sorry, and I'll select my surface. And you see that right now the knot is not actually going in the direction that I'd like it to go in. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle that knot. And now you see that it's going to run along the surface here. And I'm going to click once there and maybe again over here, hit enter. And now I can start because of those knots, I can start to drag the surface in, and the knot is holding this away. Sorry, the original control point is holding itself away from the surface so that I can actually adjust the surface even more carefully like this. Okay, so it's pretty cool actually. I think a lot of people have a tendency to think of Rhino as being really limited when it comes to this kind of mushy modeling, and it's not. We can really do a ton of stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead right now at this point, and I'm going to pop over into my first solid layer, which I've already prepared here, just because of the time constraints. So I'm going to escape out of my control points. I'll hide this, and I'll turn on my first solid. And you can see actually that in this case, my final result looked like this. Let me change the color so you guys can see it a little bit better. Let's make it blue. So this is my first solid. And you can see I've really gotten pretty close to the shape of this helmet. And what we're missing now is this little back end here. So before I go ahead and do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and insert not a knot anymore, but now a kink, which is going to allow me to make a crease in my surface. So I'll go back into my points on menu here, point edit, and I'll go to insert kink, and I'm going to select my surface again. And again, I'm wanting to insert it in the opposite surface direction, so I'll go ahead and toggle. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it right about there and hit enter. And I can see that it's right here. Now I'll turn on control points for my surface. And you can see that what happens is if I window select this point and I start to drag it, now instead of getting that nice smooth shape that we were getting before, I'm actually getting a crease. And if we look at this in the rendered view, just for the sake of understanding really what's happening here, you can see that I'm pulling control points and it's giving me this really lovely definition here. I mean, this is so much fun for making all kinds of stuff, particularly industrial design shapes. And you can see that because I didn't grab all of the control points, it starts to diminish in terms of the crease as it goes down on the surface here. So that's basically where I would leave this. And I'm going to go ahead, in the case of making this for real, I would have copied this because I also need to create this portion here of my helmet, which is a separate element. So I'm going to go into my next part of this. This is the kink that I created for the actual webinar here, and it has a little bit of roundness at the end. And it's a little bit more defined as it goes down. And now I'm going to turn on my spoiler surface. So what I did was I took two surfaces from the original rounded shape. I made one kinked surface that was just like this, and from the second copied surface I made another spoiler surface that looks like this. So let's turn off the kink for a second. So let me go back into my ghosted display mode so we can see what we're talking about here. I have this surface here, which is going to be used only to make the spoiler, which is this plastic element that goes on the back of the helmet. And at this point, I'll start turning on my curves layer. I have all my curves in place here. You can see that this is my layer, my curve that I'm going to use to trim away the excess from this exterior portion of the helmet. So I'll select this, and I can now turn off my picture frame. I'll select this curve here. And just in case you guys were a little bit confused about the control points and how I got that roundedness, once I moved this edge here out, and that's the kinked area, in order to sort of bring a little bit of that roundness to the bottom, I just started dragging this other control point, which is not part of a kink. And that gives me that nice rounded quality there. So just dragging and pulling, moving around your model, looking at it from the top right? So if you see that the top is working properly here, shape-wise, great. If it's not, go ahead and start adjusting again, control point editing, until you get the shape that you like. One thing that I always tell my students, and that I will tell you now, is that instead of picking individual control points, you should always be thinking about window selecting a group of control points. That's how you're going to get better control, and that's how you're going to get smoothness. And if you are not constantly taking a look around your object and making sure that it's symmetrical, if that's what you're trying to achieve, you're going to probably find yourself with something that looks very blobbish at the end. So constantly look, toggle between your rendered view all the time, because your rendered view will show you things like this little element, which in this case is not an important thing in this model, but could be if we were worried about this area where the seam is affecting the rest of the shape. Keep going back and forth between rendered and ghosted, or whichever display mode you like to work in the most. I like ghosted. So we're in our right view. I'm going to turn my control points off, and I'll go back into my ghosted view. And I'm just going to go ahead and, using this planar curve, right, which I built right on the C-plane, I'll do the trim command. And I'm just going to trim away the excess. Okay. And now I'm left with a surface that, as you can see, is not impacted by that little bit of crease that was not very pretty, because we didn't want to use that portion of the surface anyway. So we've got that, and we're going to go ahead now and start putting together some other pieces of the puzzle. This can be offset. So I'm going to offset surf, and I'm going to offset this in. So flip all. When you have a surface and you like the shape of it and you're using the offset command, be careful to be thinking about it as in terms of doing an offset in, because most of the time this shape will be a little bit changed if you offset out. So we want to sort of hide the offset portion. I'm going to go ahead and do an offset distance of 0.175. I'm working in centimeters right now. And you see now that I have created this solid offset, solid yes, both sides no. If I get rid of my surface here, I have this portion of the helmet ready to go. So I'm going to place this onto a new layer. I'll call that layer final pieces, just because I have actually my final grouping of objects finished here for the rendering process. But I'll go ahead and hide that. All right, change object layer. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and change to a different, let's see, that's not the one I want. Here, let's just say, or you know what, we're going to go to this one, and we're going to turn off final piece, and we'll turn off these two as well. Okay, so this was from the beginning of me working, and I initially thought that the process that I would use would involve me offsetting this surface, and then later on I realized that really this is better achieved by doing a different sort of command. So I'm going to actually use a command called untrim, and I'm going to go back to the original shape. Okay? If you ever trim away a portion of a surface, you can use this command if you have made a mistake to bring your surface back to a pre-trimmed object here, like that. And so the first thing that I'm going to do, rather than trimming, is I'll do the wire cut command. I'm going to select this outer curve here, and I'll type in wire cut. And I'm going to select my object to cut and press enter. And I always keep wire cut toggled to keep all equals yes, just because for me it's easier to just figure out what I want to get rid of after. But you can toggle it to keep all no, and then it will prompt you. And the reason why I'm wire cutting here, for those of you that don't know the command, is because instead of making a trimmed surface that's hollow inside and has no volume, I've actually created a solid. Okay, you can see that there's another surface here that's been created perpendicular to my C-plane. So now I have a solid to work with, and the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this object. So I'll copy it in place by right-clicking over the copy object, the copy icon here, or by typing in place, which is the command. And then I'll just go ahead and lock one of these copies. So lock. I have one still available to me. And with the locked copy, I'll go ahead and use this curve that I've created, not that one. Let's go ahead and use that one, to trim away the excess of that poly surface so that I'm left with just the shield, basically, for the eyes here. And then I'll hit enter. Great. And now I'm going to offset this. I'm going to offset it in two directions. So I'll do the offset surf command. Since it's a single surface, not a poly surface, I have the option of offsetting both sides, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. Both sides, yes. And distance, 0.175 is fantastic. I'm going to accept that. Let's see how that looks now. So that looks pretty good. I might want this to be slightly more offset, but I think for this particular portion, you know what, I do want it to be more offset. So I'm going to redo that, offset surf, both sides yes. Let's say distance is going to be 0.3. Now the reason that I'm doing the offset both sides right now, and I have delete input toggle to know because I'm going to use that surface again. The reason that I'm doing both sides is because sometimes I'm going to use this to do a Boolean difference with, and sometimes if I have taken a surface from another poly surface and the surfaces are sharing the exact surface space, the Boolean difference command doesn't work as well. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock now, and using this poly surface that I just created, I'm going to go ahead and do my Boolean difference command. So I'm going to select the surfaces or poly surfaces to subtract from. That's my helmet. Press enter. And then the surfaces or poly surfaces to subtract with, delete input, let's say yes. And I'll use the visor and enter. Okay. Now you can see that I have that surface there. If I quickly hide it, you'll see that I was able to cut away, leaving this helmet solid still, a portion for the visor to sit inside the helmet. So I'm going to undo that. And now I want to give this a rotation because I'm going to offset this outwards now. And as we know, when you have these visors for a motorcycle helmet, they need to actually slide up and over the front of the helmet. So I'm going to go ahead and I think, I'm not sure if I left it there or not, but at some point, yes, I have a tiny curve that's exactly, oops, 0.33 centimeters, 3.3 millimeters, I think. And I'm just going to go ahead and rotate that in. So using my rotate command, I'll select my object. Center of rotation, let's see if I can find my quad point up here. It's either going to be a quad or an end, but it's quad. Next point is quad, and then the next point is going to be end. So I'll make sure that my end O snap is toggled on. And let's zoom in there and find that end point. Okay. And now, when I go ahead and I do my offset again, I'm going to offset this, offset surf. Now I want a distance of 0.33, so I'll say distance 0.33. Make sure that solid is toggled to yes. And now I can say delete input yes, because I don't want that surface anymore. Enter. Okay. So now I've just rotated it enough, and this is, frankly, the truth is that for this exercise, we're just doing a design. We're not really doing the engineering of this helmet. And if I were engineering this helmet, we would need some other elements in order to make the measurements correct. But this is good for visual for doing the rendering. So I'm just going to also hide this on my final pieces layer, change object layer. And now I'm going to go ahead and shell this object. Okay? So instead of offsetting surf, I'm actually going to hollow out the inside with the shell command. So shell thickness is 0.25, enter. And I'm going to select this face at the bottom here to shell, enter again. And as you can see, I've now hollowed out this shape, right? We have a kink in place or a crease in our surface that is fine. We have this indentation where I Boolean difference to my object. And everything is followed inside, right? So we have this offset of all of those surface elements inside of the shelled object, which is really cool and time-saving, I think. So I'm just going to make this plan again so I can see what I'm doing a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and select this curve here. Okay. And this curve represents the actual area out of which a person would see, because right now this is blocked off. So I'll again use the wire cut command, wire cut. And I'm going to select this object and hit enter and enter again. And now delete, and I'm left with a solid, right? Okay, all of this is a solid object. It has the wall thickness that I wanted it to have throughout. It has all of these different sort of dimensions and modulations throughout the helmet. And it's starting to look like an actual, you know, a real helmet, basically. So if I bring back my final pieces now just to take a look, right, we see that we are starting to get somewhere. We have this spoiler on the back, although this spoiler is intersecting a little bit. I would have to adjust that. I'll cheat for a second. I wouldn't do it that way for real, but just so you get the idea, and also the face mask. And I'm just going to turn those off now. So we are going to go into the top area, and we're going to start playing around with how to make some more and different types of modulations on an object. So I'm actually going to delete these curves. So we can start over again now. I was worried about time, but I seem to be racing through, and I can't see your questions, so I hope you guys are not, you know, panicking. And even if you are, I'll have no idea until after the session is over, so there you go. However, if you have any questions later on, just let me know, and I'll go ahead and email with you, or you can give me a phone call. Just go to my website.
Maya, I have a question right now for you, maybe.
Yes?
There's a question that's very pertinent. How did you get that surface? That's a
This
question
surface?
Yes.
Which surface?
The question says, how did you get that surface? So I don't know what they're referring to, but I think it's the surface here.
So maybe if you didn't come in at the beginning, I had this first solid object that I modeled using, let's see if I can just hide this for a second. Where are we working? Okay. So we had this sort of shape, which we did using surface modeling techniques with control point editing. And that's where that original surface came from. And I haven't really actually used any other surfaces, so I'm thinking that that's what the person is referring to. But if the person needs further clarification, just go ahead and ask another question, and Barbara will give it to me. I have no problem if you interrupt me, Barbara, to ask. Okay? Can you hear me? Hello, Barbara?
Yes, Maya, sure.
Oh,
Maya,
okay,
can
great.
you hear me?
Yes, yes,
yeah,
I can
of
now.
course. Keep
okay.
asking questions away, and we'll leave some time at the end.
Keep asking questions, absolutely. So there's a poly surface here, just for clarification. There is no actual surface, like a single surface left here. These are all poly surfaces, and in case that's confusing, the reason why is because the shell command takes into account the exterior of an original surface, and makes a secondary surface, sort of like an offset solid. In my opinion, in simpler shapes, it often does a much nicer job. So that's why I chose to do it that way. So there isn't actually a surface. This is a series of surfaces that are joined together already. So I'm going to go ahead and into my top view here. And I'm going to use some curves that I've created previously, right? That's not a curve. And I'm going to go ahead and use the project command to project these two curves onto the top of the helmet. So top, just get into plan view there. It doesn't matter. Project takes into account the C-plane, so even if you're rotated around in space, it's always going to project parallel, in a parallel direction to your C-plane. But it's nice to see what you're doing. I'll go ahead and do the project curves command here, or you can just type in the word project, and then I'll select my object here. You know what? Actually, I lied. I'm going to make a copy of this surface first. So I'm going to do a command called extract surf, and I'm going to select the top portion of my poly surface. And the reason why I'm doing this is simply because I don't want to have the projection go through multiple layers of a poly surface. I'd rather just project once. So in this case, I can go ahead and project onto this surface, and since the surface is a single surface, it will only accept these curves one time. So now I'll go ahead and do the project command. I'll select my curves, 1 and 2. We really only need to do this once because I could easily mirror it over. And I'll press enter. And then I'll go ahead and select my surface to project onto, the single surface, not the poly, and hit enter again. Okay. And because of the fact that the single surface shares the same exact structure as the poly surface, it's projected those curves perfectly onto the poly surface as well. And now, excuse me, I can go ahead and delete the single surface. Don't need that anymore. And I'll go ahead as well and select these two objects. I don't need them. I can hide them for later in case. And I'm going to go ahead and offset these curves. So if I know the actual distance of the offset, that's great. But if I don't know exactly how much I want to offset them, I can also use this through point sub selection. And I can use that even by typing in the letter T. For those of you who never realized that you can just type in T, that's going to make that through point part of the offset. And once I do my through point command, then I can just decide where I want my offset to be on the surface. Okay. I actually, you guys, kind of just screwed up. So I just realized that I should have offset those above and projected them both down. But that's fine because I can do something else here, which is I can split my surface. Not that though. With my two curves here, 1 and 2. Actually, I think this is how I did it the first time. Okay. And then I can use the edge of the split. So I have two single surfaces now, and I've just opened up this solid. And I can do an offset using the offset curve on surface command. So I'm going to do offset CRV on surf. Now I'll go ahead and select my polysurface edge, the one that's facing out. Like that. Okay, and now let's say offset distance, in this case, we'll take a look at 0.03, or we can again do through point and decide. Okay, so if you have something to snap to, great. If not, then we're going to just do offset curve on surface this way. Okay, so that's really small. I think I'm going to offset this at a distance of 1. So I'm going to delete that. Select my curve. I'm going to give it a distance of 1. Perfect. And I'll do the same thing on this side as well. Okay, great. And then I'm going to use those two offset curves, which are sitting on my surface, to trim away that interior portion of this surface. It's always nice to find an ISO curve to let Rhino know exactly what you're trying to trim away. Okay. Enter. So now I have this hollow area here, right? And the next thing I want to do is I'm going to actually offset these two surfaces. So I'm going to go back into my front view. And I'm going to offset the two surfaces. Offset surf. Let's give these a distance of 0.4 for offsets. Enter. Oops, one more thing. Let's offset not solid. And delete input no. So I'm going to say solid no. And delete input no. And hit enter. Great. So this is what I'm going to use to basically make the modulated surfaces that you see in the image here, these guys. Okay. Now, before I get into making those, I want to give a little bit more of a possibility for surface curvature continuity or surface continuity on these guys. So I'm going to use the bend command to bring this point of the new surface or these small surfaces down to meet the original one. So in my right view, I'm going to do bend. Select my object, this, enter. The start of the spine, we can find the quad point here, that's fine, and then the quad point there, and then I just want to snap it to the quad point there. And you see how it just bends down. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Quad, quad, if I can get it, and then quad. Okay. That may not be perfect. I think I probably snapped to something else, but that's fine for me. And in this case, because we're short on time, I'm going to delete the two surfaces on this side, assuming that I can grab them. And I'll just mirror this surface over the Y axis. Okay. So what we have here now is this empty area that's to be filled in. And we're going to do a command which a lot of people seem to struggle with. And I think the reason why people are struggling with the command is because they're assuming that it's going to do a lot of the work for them. We need to add a little bit of work. So that's the blend surface command. And I'm going to go ahead and just type in blend SRF, blend surf. And Rhino's going to prompt me to select the segment for the first edge. I'll go ahead and select this one. Then, since I'm done with my first edge, because that entire edge was selected, I'll hit enter. And select the segment for the second edge. I'm going to go ahead and select the exterior one. And you see now that I have a seam that Rhino's asking me to adjust. I like this seam actually here, so I'm going to go ahead and hold on to that one. But I'm looking at this now, and this is a good time to look at your object as a rendered object. I see that it's really a disaster in here, so I need to fix that. So I can use these sliders to adjust my surface, the new surface that's being created, but there's something else that I can do, which is to add shapes. And adding shapes allows me to use my O-snaps to go around, let's say quad. Let's find points on this. The last one I'm actually going to go to just for the sake of this one part. I need to find the quad point somewhere here. Interesting. Weird, it's not showing me my head shapes. There we go, on curve, that's what I want. So I'm going to do quad and then quad. And you see how it starts to resolve itself a little bit there. Let's say end and end. Something strange happening here. Quad to quad and quad to quad maybe. Something bizarre just happened there with the preview, so I'm wondering if I did something weird. But let's take a look and see. Yeah, no, not good. So I'm going to go ahead and undo those. And I'm just going to do it really quickly one more time. And just for the sake of being safe, we can see that this is a mess here. The isocurves are a disaster. I'm going to go ahead and add some shapes. Do I have a project on now? Just snapping to the wrong thing. So it's snapping to some weird things here, which is making it a little bit tricky. I'm going to turn on perp. See how we clean this up? Quad, perp. And all of these isocurves start to resolve out of that mess. And quad, let's make sure that this, I'm snapping to the right thing. And actually, I'm just going to turn the curves filter off here. Quad, perp, and quad, perp. Not really sure what I'm snapping to. Okay. Well, anyway, guys, you get the point. And the more that we add information, always, although sometimes it can be to our detriment, but the cleaner we get these isocurves that are running around here. Now I can go ahead and I can decide, do I want, what sort of curvature continuity am I interested in achieving here? And now is when I'm going to turn on my rendered view, my rendered display mode, and take a look and see what's going on with my object. So assuming that I'm fairly happy here, I don't see a lot of messiness going on, I can still start to adjust with my sliders just to get some additional, bendiness. If I wanted it to be crazy like that, I can do that, right? And anything that you want, you can adjust. You can also adjust these individually. So if I go into my posted mode again here, and I take a look, now I'm done with adding sections, so I'm going to say enter. Now I get my little points here, and I can manually adjust them as well. And these will manually adjust, and each of those will, change the relationship between that curvature and the curvature that's here. So pull it in, and very carefully you can go around and do all of those. It's 11:43, so I'm going to keep it moving along. I'm going to enter to accept. That looks really terrible. But I'm going to go ahead now and talk a little bit for a second. I mean, obviously, this is its own surface. I could mirror that across and join all of this together. And I already have the two elements of the spoiler and the mask or windshield there. So for pieces like this, these little cutouts here, which I have projected onto my surface, and I have another one that was projected here on the front, I'm going to go ahead again and do that extract surface with the copy option toggled to yes, and then I'll just cut away pieces and I can offset them and use them as cutters, and you'll see exactly what I mean. Right now I'm going to go into my final model and turn all of this stuff off. And let's see what we've got here. You go off too. Okay. So here's my final piece. We're in the top view, so let me just go ahead and do my multiple views, and I'm going to wait for the render for a sec. I have finished this up basically by doing a bunch of little details. Okay, I've got a I've got, you know, a sort of quick plush inside portion here. I have these which, if opened up, could be rendered as vents, but right now they're closed vents just for the sake of the facility. I have this element here which is going to go ahead and allow the mask to open and close. Another vent here, a little bit of a rubber rib around there, and then some screw elements here that will hold the spoiler in place. So not a huge deal, right? Just sort of basic. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and go into my named views panel. And I just want you guys to really use that all the time if you're rendering. I think probably a lot of you do, but named views allows you to save whatever view you're in. So if I decide that that's perfect for me, and I go ahead and hit Save As, I can save it as Render 2. Okay. It's now going to give me a little icon here that says Render 2, and anytime I move my object around, if I click Render 2, it's going to bring me right back to that view. Okay. I can also easily delete that because it's not very nice. You get to your named views panel in a number of ways, but the easiest way is just by right-clicking and selecting it here under named views. Okay. So I have my render view, and as soon as I click that, you'll see that my tab here at the bottom changes to be named render rather than what it was before, which was perspective. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys like the easiest way to create this image without even making materials or changing settings or doing anything that would require you to know much about rendering. If you haven't already done this and you have V-Ray, then you should go to V-Ray and download the V-Ray Express toolbar, which I have right here. Okay, it's this little icon that you can dock, and once it's docked, I just work with it there. If you don't know how to find it, go to Tools and then Toolbar Layout, and you'll see under V-Ray Express you have the option of bringing that out. Okay. V-Ray Express has materials, like 200 materials. It has studio floors, studio lighting, and HDRI environments all in it. So for basic, especially for industrial design like this, it's pretty much everything that you might need. And if there are a couple of additional things that you need, the V-Ray library materials on the Chaos Group website also are, you know, extensive. So you can just download whatever individual materials you need from at the moments that you'll need them. So for this particular helmet, I have used the following. Car paint, this really attractive Moto green right here. Okay. For the helmet, you see I'm just selecting the little arrow at the lower right-hand side of each of these icons, and it shows me all of my options. This is my clear plastic that's on the helmet here. I've also used titanium for the gear portion of the mask and for the little screw, and I've used a black rubber material for all of the vents. Okay. Once I've applied all those materials, and it's really simple to apply the materials, you just basically, I mean, I have my V-Ray toolbar up at the top there, and this is, the M stands for material editor, the O stands for options, and the F is the frame buffer, which is just the previous image that was rendered. So we can go ahead and also place lights here, but for something like this, it's really simple just to go ahead and select a studio floor from the studio floor options, which are multiple. We have a 360 degrees up until just a simple disk. In my case, I've selected the soft disk studio wall, and if I go into my layers, I can turn that on, and you'll see what it looks like. It is somewhere around here. There it is. Okay. Now, with these, you can move them around. Let me just close out my materials for a sec. They're not placed, you know, with any sort of specificity other than I think they're centered, but you can move this around, adjust it height-wise by using your gumball up and down, boom, 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 in and out. And the further away from your object, the reflection is going to change, obviously, from the lights. And then I'm just going to really quickly show you guys that we have lighting options. So all of these lighting options here are going to give you different results. And you can see these very tiny icons are showing you the color of the background, etc. But if I turn on the one that I have chosen, which is my softbox car studio, let's just select it here. You see that they've just set up lights for you in advance, basically. So rather than you having to have the knowledge of how to set up the lights to best illuminate your scene, these guys have done the work for you, and you can just go ahead and select one of these studio lighting options and illuminate your scene. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my rendered mode now. You can see that I'm going to actually go back to my named views here. You can see that I haven't applied all the materials. The clear plastic material will actually look black because black is transparent. So I would go here and I would say clear plastic, click it twice, and then for all of these materials which I want to be rubber, polysurface, 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 and polysurface, and then this base piece right here, I'm going to go to my plastics, and I'm going to go to black rubber. Okay, and now I'll just go back to my render. Two more things before I start answering questions, and I'll just let this render out. I'm going to open up my V-Ray options panel here, and I'm going to tell you that in this particular case, I'm not doing a single thing to change the settings. For the render that you guys saw at the end, which is bigger than the one I'll do now, I didn't do a single thing to change the settings. I just literally hit render. But there are a couple of things that you will want to know at least how to access, and one of those is the output size, which is in this output area right here. You can adjust your width and height of the actual resolution of your image here. The other thing that I love, which I think everyone should do if you have more than one computer, is the distributed rendering. With your V-Ray license, you're able to place the license on more than one computer, and you can search for other computers that have V-Ray on them as well, and they will use those other computers to make basically a faster render engine. So if you've ever heard of a render farm or you've seen render farms, you can create your own mini render farm by clicking here, looking for the IP address of your other computers, and then clicking distributed rendering on right there. Okay. Then once you've done that, for the presets, I say interior preset, very high quality, check, and close that, and then I'll go ahead and hit render. Boom. And it will start to render. And this rendering took about 10 minutes. I'm not sure if, you can see that that's my other computer that's attached to this one working. So that's, you see the name of it. And if you have multiple computers working together, you'll see all these little boxes have different names of the computer that is working with them. So I'm not going to do the full rendering just because I'm afraid that it might impact my ability to answer questions because of the connectivity issue when the computer is working so hard. But please ask any and all questions, and I'll be available for them now. And if you have questions that don't get answered, send them in or email me directly, and I'll be happy to answer them for you guys. And thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Bye. So Barbara?
Yes, Maya, great. Yes, where should they, so they should email you the questions at www.Design Rhino.
Well, usually they email the questions to you guys, or the questions are submitted.
Yeah.
But anyone who wants to contact me ever can contact me at maya@designrhinonyc.com.
That's what I thought. But feel free to ask any question now, and for further questions, you can write them to me, Barbara@Novedge.com, and I will pass them on to Maya, and we'll have a special blog post, especially for all your questions. In the meantime, I'm going to pass a couple of questions live so we can address them. Okay, could the groove in the top of the helmet be done with a pipe, a curve to size and split its surfaces?
The separation between the two surfaces that then we're going to make a blend surface, if that's what you're talking about. Yes, I think so. The difference is that when you make a pipe and you have it bent at that sort of an angle, often the surface starts to become less workable. So you would have to be careful about the sort of angle that you were piping.
All right, question number 2. Would you add an HDRI environment?
Yes, always. The HDRI environments that are in V-Ray here are great for beginning to set up new types of much higher quality images. They have the studio environments, and then there's some outdoor and one indoor environment here. I would absolutely, I did add one actually for this scene. I think I used Studio 4.
Great. By the way, it looks great. It looks so beautiful and easy.
It's amazing how easy this is. That's why, I mean, it's incredibly exciting to me that you don't have to know literally anything about rendering, because rendering is overwhelming and scary sometimes. There's so much information, but the only issue with this rendering that I have is right here. I can see a tiny little seam, and honestly, we really do go in and fix those things up in Photoshop most of the time. Unless I were wanting this to be absolutely perfect for production, I would just go in and erase that little seam. But I mean, this is incredible. It took me literally 3 minutes to set the rendering up and 10 minutes to finish this rendering, which is like 1200 by 800, I think.
Wow, that's efficient. Okay, I'm going to go on and ask you another question. Are studio walls in the Express toolbar?
Yes, they are in the Express toolbar. And if you don't see them, go into your back end on your toolbar layout. At the top, you'll go to Tools, Options, or Tools, Toolbar Layout up here. And this will show you all of your possible toolbars. And if you click, for example, in V-Ray Express, it's going to show me each possible element of my toolbar layout that I can include or not include. I can also restore defaults if something's not showing up. But yes, these are all, this is the toolbar right here, actually. So yeah, you can always find them there. And you can edit them as well.
All right. Is it possible to not render a visible object but still be able to use its reflective properties?
Absolutely. You can go into your sorry, wrong thing. You can go into your, I think it's in display. I do this actually often because I set up little blocking elements to sort of make more ambient light sometimes when I don't want a direct light shining mostly in architectural renderings. I'm trying to remember where that is. I think maybe, let's see, if we go to properties, display. You know what? Let's keep that question because there's a very specific way to do it, and I know that I've done it a bunch of times and I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But yes, the answer is you can absolutely have elements in your scene that you don't see.
That's fantastic. I think that's it for questions. I think, you know, there were a lot of attendees, but I think they're very competent. I think these people know what they're doing, so they just enjoy the presentation. Great. And so, yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Maia. I'm going to get back to me as a presenter, and I'm going to wrap it up, and we can conclude. Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much for attending this webinar with Novedge and Maia Merav Holtzman. Next week, in our upcoming webinar, we'll see a beginner's look at T-splines for Rhino 5. This webinar will explain the benefits and nuances of T-splines surface modeling and how to tag team strategies between Rhino 5 and T-splines can be used for exquisite form development and easily initiated changes. I remind you that this webinar is being recorded, and it will be put up as soon as later today on our Vimeo and YouTube channel. So check it out, tell your friends, and we're going to share it on Facebook, Google+, and all our social media. In fact, I recommend you like us and on Facebook, so you get all the latest updates on webinars, specials, and more. Also, check out our Novedge blog, where there's a lot of technical support. There's great interviews with artists, designers, and makers of today. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Last but not least, I want to say goodbye to Maia. And,
goodbye, thank you.
And thank everybody for attending, and we'll see you next week. And Maia, hopefully you'll present more webinars with us. You know, we have a soft spot for you, and hopefully this is not the last webinar. But,
great, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Fantastic. Bye, everybody, from Novedge and from Maia. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.